In this episode, I'll be speaking with Andrea Wady. Andrea started out a traditional rider and ran an ethical horse tour business in Costa Rica for 15 years before making a complete transformation in how she approached horses. She has trained with many of the world's leading Liberty trainers, and through this and experiences with her own horses, she created what she calls pure Liberty. You may know her from the movie Taming Wild Pura Vida, where she and Elsa Sinclair walked two rescue horses across Costa Rica on foot. You are going to love this conversation. So here we go, episode 89, Pure Liberty with Andrea Wady. Hi, I'm Karen Rolfe, and welcome to Horse Training in Harmony. This podcast is about you making progress with your horse in a way that you both can love. It's about learning how to move and be in harmony. Because yes, you really can develop a horse to be both athletic and happy. When we show up as our best selves for our horses will show up for us. So let's get started. Well, hello, Andrea. Thank you so much for joining me on this podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm absolutely thrilled to be here.
Yeah, we just said before we started recording that we each feel like we've known each other. I've heard, a lot about you, Andrea, and it seems, likewise. And it's sort of weird meeting because I feel like I've met you, but I haven't met you. So this is nice.
I know, it's weird, isn't it? We've been kind of like skirting around each other for ages, with David being the linchpin in the middle.
Exactly, yeah. So we have some things in common for sure. Many things, I think. But you, like me, started out one way with horses and then kind of completely transformed how you interact with horses. And we share a mutual friend who is actually both of our catalysts for that aforementioned transformation.
As he was for many, I think.
Yeah. So can you share a little bit about, the nutshell of what you were doing before, why things changed and how they've changed?
Yeah, well, I grew up riding in England, which back then, I'm 50 now, and back then, it was a very particular way of doing things, and I was kind of classed as this plucky rider, which, looking back now, that just meant I would make any horse do absolutely anything I wanted it to with force, and a lot of force. And the more I used, the more I was applauded by the adults around me, so that was kind of reinforcing in itself. Went through sort of junior jumpers, all of that sort of thing, and then when I met my husband, he's a surfer, we disappeared off to Costa Rica. We didn't go home. We went on vacation and we didn't go home. We just saw our plane leave, like, bye, and decided to stay and see what we could make of it. And it was so life-changing and so amazing. And I was missing horses desperately, and I wanted to ride, but everywhere I looked, I knew I would be funding abuse. Don't get me wrong, there are some brilliant horse people in Costa Rica, but I was in the real touristy area, and it was as you imagine. It was awful. So I decided to open a horse tour and make an ethical horse tour where their well-being was put before profit. It was amazing. I had a lady come riding with me, and she said, "Have you heard of Pirelli?" And I was like, "Yes, I've heard of it." And of course, I thought I knew everything about it. And I said, "Oh yeah, actually, I saw a poster and there's this man called David Littman and he's coming to Costa Rica." And she was so starstruck. She was like, "Oh my God, you have to go, you have to go." And I thought, do you know what? I will. I think I will. So I kind of swaggered in there with my enormous ego, like just trying to get myself in the door with my ego so big. And I looked around and I just thought I had the whole thing down, And I met David and I was instantly sort of back-footed because I was suddenly like, I'm not so sure I know what I'm doing here. I'm like, oh no. And I'm looking around and I was like, oh, this is easy, you know, wriggle the rope. Just flick that stick around a bit and that's it, I've got it. And he was watching me and he says afterwards, he said, I knew I had about 2 minutes to get your attention. So when it came to the riding, he just took my reins away. And I went, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. And I actually don't know anything about horses whatsoever. And I'd been telling him about, how I used a tie down on my horse and blah, blah, blah. And he was like, oh, okay, awesome. Let me just show you something. Just sit here on the bucket a minute. And I'm like, oh, that's awesome. He singled me out, you know, me and my ego. And I sat down and I was like, yeah. Well, he took a rope and he loosely put it around my feet. He said, you know, do you mind if I do this? Do you mind if I touch you? No, it's fine. It's fine. And he loosely put the rope around the back of my neck and under my feet. And I was in a position that my horse was in.
Wow.
And it makes me really emotional because it changed everything. Yeah. I burst into tears. I felt so ashamed of myself, but I didn't know any different. And he just looked at me and he went, it's okay. Now it begins. And that started a 20-year friendship. And he has been amazing and shared so much with me. And I will be forever grateful to him. But it was very humbling. And, you know, the easy thing would have been to rip the rope off and go home. But thankfully, there was enough that punched through my ego that just went, this is what you've been waiting for. I'd sat and watched people doing bridleless riding and I wanted it so bad, but I just couldn't say, I don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
And that was it. That set me off on 20 years of finding a different way and ultimately just being passionate about who do I need to be for a horse to really want to be with me and for my horse to be happy. And that looks different for every horse. So it's a never-ending journey. Never ending. Yeah.
Well, I can very much relate to that story. I guess I got off easy because David didn't tie me up, but he was my first introduction to Pirelli and natural horsemanship and anything other than, you know, dressage. And for me, it was in the friendly game, you know, the very first game, and my Steady Eddie bomb-proof, you know, horse that I bought, I brought to the clinic, you know, I could see tension in there that I'd never seen before. I'd never recognized it. And that was the same experience of like, all of a sudden there's a perspective shift and you see it and you can't unsee it. Or for you can't unfeel it.
That's it.
And it's like, that just changed everything. I was like, this horse has been scared and I never saw it. You know? Yeah. So yeah, and then
it's hard, you know, you battle, as we do with a lot of our students, you see them feeling very guilty and that it's like, actually that's making it worse. Yeah. Now it's just time to wipe the slate clean and start again. Exactly.
Focus on, you know, that gift of awareness, and every day's a new day. Yeah. So how did, you know, so there was that day that everything changed, and then there's daily life. So what were the next steps? Because sometimes, you know, sometimes we have the big breakthrough, but then you go home and you're like, oh, well, now what do I do? How was it, you know, starting to actually implement things in your daily life?
The first thing I did was go back. I just went back and said, sorry. I'm so sorry that I didn't see this. And I started to, I say this to my students, walk in, when you have these opportunities of a change of awareness, go in and pretend you've never even met your horse before and just start again. And things can come a lot quicker than you think. You think, oh no, I've got to start again. And you know, I went right through the Pirelli route, which, you know, whilst it's not where I am now, I will be forever thankful for it. I think it saved a lot of people and a lot of horses. But, you know, like anything, things can be a bridge. So I just followed through, studied with David as much as I could. I went up and groomed for him a lot and things like that in America. And then I was quite lucky because we had Costa Rica to dangle in front of some really amazing trainers as a carrot to get them to come down. I would put on clinics for them, invite, have guests come down, use my horses, but I would get to study with them. Mm-hmm. And I would make them all, just, I was like a sponge. I would just be like right at the front watching everyone. So we had some amazing people come through. And I think I always say, learn from as many people as you can and take what ingredients work for you. Make your own cake, make your own flavour, and don't be afraid to change it sometimes. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of what I did. And then I invited Elsa Sinclair down. And I told her about the dream I'd had about rescuing 2 horses. Well, it was originally only going to be 1. I was going to do it by myself. I wanted to rescue a horse from what's called the subasta down there, which is the market basically, and it's horrendous. But I wanted to rescue a horse, and I wanted to walk with the horse because liberty is my passion. I realised I couldn't be completely at liberty because I wanted to walk from one side of Costa Rica to the other. Well, there's roads and rivers and all sorts. Yeah. But I wanted to be at liberty as much as I could and have a liberty mindset when using tools. And Elsa said, I want to do it with you. And, she'd done her amazing film, Taming Wild, which just blew me away. So we made a movie while we were doing it. And it was incredible. But just backtracking one bit before that, I remember there being really one defining moment that made me go, okay, I love natural horsemanship. I think it's brilliant. But when I take away the tools and I take away the cookies, which, I do plenty of training with cookies, but I wanted to know really who do I have to be for this horse to stick with me. So I used to have some lovely liberty going with my horse, Archie, in Costa Rica. We could run around the rainforest and it was amazing. And I just thought, right, I'm going to put down my carrot stick. I'm going to take off my treat pouch. And we're going to go out and it's just going to be magical. We're going to have this unicorn connection. Day 4, he left me for dust. I was about 3 miles from home. And I had to walk all the way home by myself, dragging my once more battered ego behind me. And I got back and he just looked at me and was like, yeah, no, that's not it. I'd trained a great pattern. But when the pattern wasn't there anymore, I had nothing. So there I was starting again from scratch, it felt like. And that's what really started to fire me up was how can I get this horse to want to be with me without any coercion of any type? And don't get me wrong, I train with ropes, I train with treats. I'm a massive advocate for all of that. But I just wanted to know if I could be what they needed me to be. Mm-hmm. And the answer is sometimes I can and sometimes I can't, depending on my mindset. So the trek across Costa Rica was incredible. We were exploring that movement lowers stress. And the first 3 days was hell on earth. Let me tell you, those horses wanted nothing to do with us. We were having to use way more make than we wanted. We all ended up in tears. It was horrendous. And then something changed. And just the traveling together, we were doing about 20 miles a day. It changed everything, Karen. It's like we woke something up in them. And they would meet us every day and be like, let's go. And our walks got longer and looser. And everything started to become more effortless. And I realized, what we need to be is a little bit more in their world. Not them in our world. And it blew my mind how long they have to stand and really look at something and how much they love to stop and look at the view and really look at the view. And, and that's something David taught me. He in clinics, he'd be like, Andrea, go and let your horse think for 5 minutes, stand against the wall. And I remember once going, okay, that's good, I'd done that. And he was like, yeah, that was 1 minute and 24 seconds. And he was timing me. Wow. And I went, oh no. So being out there with them, there was no rush. Mm-hmm. And it was amazing. It was absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I watched the movie. And very, very impressive. And I highly recommend anybody to watch this. So Taming Wild Pura Vida. And we'll make sure that that people know how to find that. I'll have a link. Or is there a quick way to tell people where to find that movie?
If you go to vimeo.com and just look up Taming Wild Pura Vida, you can rent it or download it off there.
Yeah, beautiful. So a lot of stuff in what you just said there. The joining them in their world, I think, is really important. And I talk a lot about this assumption of obligingness that we so often have in the horse world. We have this assumption that the horses are just supposed to do what we ask. They've been beasts of burden and, throughout history. And to stop and think, wait, no, they don't have to do, they don't have to do anything. There's no shoulds. They shouldn't, all horse should do is be a horse. And I think if we,
they don't owe us anything.
Exactly. And to kind of step back and approach it from that basic attitude already changes things. But there's something that you said that I really want to kind of dig into, which is this liberty mindset. And so, you're quick to say, I changed my mindset, but I still use a rope and I still use cookies. So there's this shift that needs to happen on the inside of us. And to be able to live in this middle ground where just because you have a rope on doesn't mean you have to use it in a I'm going to make you way. And just because you have cookies doesn't mean you're bribing. and just because you want to do liberty doesn't mean you have to have your horse completely free. Because the reality of horses in our human world is sometimes there are situations that are not safe. We need to be protecting them. So I think this is where we all live, is in this kind of messy middle where the lines aren't really clear. And I think, and it's so easy to get into like a technique of this or a technique of that. And the most important thing is what's going on inside of us. It's our attitude, our basic attitude to the horse, our basic awareness of ourselves and what was going on in our minds, and kind of having our, I like to highlight, principles and priorities, because that's what's going to help us make a decision in a moment. And in the movie, there were some decisions that you guys had to make. I mean, obviously, like you said, you had halters on them because it was a long roads. I think there was at least a day where you're like, okay, we want to take the time it takes for the horses, but we got to get in before dark. And like, I could see the struggle of you wanting to stick to those principles and priorities, do right for the horse, but also doing right by the horse would be getting them somewhere safe by dark. And that's the interesting part for me, because that's the stuff that happens every day. Can you talk a little bit more about how you made those decisions? And how there's a big space between I'm going to let the horse take all the time at once, or I'm going to drag him and whack him with the stick to make sure he goes fast enough. There's some space between there. And I think that's where you guys navigated that really beautifully. So I'd love to hear more about that process, because I could see it was emotional and it was challenging.
Oh, it's hugely emotional, but I think that's where the learning was, Karen. If we could have just drifted along, the horses, to make the journey that we did, I think we did 280k, they would have taken months if they'd have been free. Months. Maybe they'd still be going. I don't know. But the liberty mindset. So what I see is people try and come down this road a little bit and they go, okay, I'm not going to ask my horse to do anything ever. Well, that's not reality. That's just not a healthy place to be. And it wasn't about what we had to ask them to do. It's where we were coming from when we asked them. Hey, and I'm a big advocate for tell them in your mind, show them a picture, tell them out loud, whatever. They feel it. And it's like, listen, we have to do this. We've got to do this and we need to go. Like when we went through the indigenous land.
Oh, that was crazy.
I mean, it was humongous. And honestly, the footage that didn't make the film would make your hair stand on end. It was terrifying.
I can only
I
imagine.
have never felt more connected afterwards with a horse than I did from that. Adversity can actually create a real mega bond as long as you're coming from a place of honesty and kindness and calmness. If you're coming from a place of getting frustrated and angry and stressed, it doesn't matter what you're asking, whether it's a tiny ask or a massive ask, you're fracturing your relationship. We asked huge things of our horses. If we'd have known, we never would have done it. We never in a million years would have done it. Yet our bond was 100 times stronger the day after the hardest day of the trek than it was when we were just sort of getting into, oh, please, will you help? When we were still fighting with ourselves. And I think that when we have this doubt in ourselves, should I be, shouldn't I be? It creates this energy that just feels so awful to the horses. If you're like, hey, this is fair, I need to ask you, can we do this together? They're like, I'm right there with you. Coming from a place of confidence. Elsa always said, confidence will trump skill every single time. Yeah. Because the horses are like, how many times have you seen it at a clinic where a husband or a partner or a wife or something will turn up and they're not the horse person and they can do anything with their horse, with the partner's horse. And then the student comes who's really stressed because it's anxious and it's scary and they can't do anything. Yeah. So it's coming from that place of confidence. So the liberty mindset for me is have your tools there, but only use them if you need to. I can't tell you the amount of people that I've had come through a Pure Liberty clinic, and they have blown my mind with how beautiful their connection was in the arena when they were completely at liberty and it was all new to them and there was no tools and the horses were just locking on and they were like this and no one was leading, no one was following, they were just together. Soon as they put the halter and lead rope back on, they were being dragged all over the place. They were hauling back. And I'm like, how interesting. When you had nothing, you had to be a little bit more honest and humble about where you were coming from. When we have tools in our hands, it's like you said, we still carry that beast of burden baggage there somewhere. So we tend to use it. And another piece of the puzzle that will help, I think, is learning to be calm in movement. A lot of us find being calm really, really easy when we're still. So we can stand with the horse and look at the view and it all feels great. But the second we start moving, our adrenaline spikes or our stress level spikes. Stress isn't always a bad thing, but it changes. So the horse will come up and that's when the split comes in. Having energy, but calmly.
Yeah, I'd love to, talk a little bit more. There's a lot of stuff in what you're saying that I want to make sure we kind of pause and go back. No. Like the thing about the tools, I think, is really interesting. I think there's something about human neurology that when we put something in a hand and we close our hand, there's that, there's something about that, and now we're grabbing. And I think the horses really pick up on that grabbing neurology, and it just, everything gets just a little tighter. So to be able to hold a tool, but even the way you hold it, I know my Lippizan Monty really taught me the difference of when I was holding the stick or when I was just resting the stick in my hand and using just the one muscle fiber that was preventing it from falling to the ground versus grabbing it. He could tell the difference. It was the difference between him staying with me or not staying with me. So I think that is an important moment when we do pick up a tool, we're still in that liberty mindset. Yeah.
Well, if you think about it, there's a whole physiology going on there. When a tight muscle creates certain, there's the chicken and the egg, but the chemicals, the brain set, the brace, mental brace, physical brace, and then it translates to the horse.
Absolutely, yeah. And another thing, when you're talking about the part of the trip and going through the indigenous lands, and for those of you, when you see the movie, I mean, steep, muddy, mud with like in between roots, and just it's like, I don't know if I could have done it. But this idea of like that it's, and you know, I do dressage with my horses, so there's a certain amount of like, come on, we got to get there. Horses aren't going to naturally go, can I do tempi changes? You know, but the reason I keep doing it is because I keep feeling like the opportunity with horses is for each of us, the horse and the person, to do something that neither of us could do by ourselves or would do by ourselves. And there's, I think when you have a horse agree to participate in this thing, even when it gets hard, you know, I've felt horses be proud on the other side. I feel like that's made me, you know, and the day that I don't feel that is probably the day I'm going to stop, you know, but I keep going because, you know, some of the lessons are hard, but it's, if you can do it in this way and not think that to be nice to your horse means you don't do anything or you don't make any requests, I don't think that's it. I mean, there's a beauty to just observing horses too, but there's this other thing that happens when you go somewhere together. Exactly. But I think it is important that if we do embark on this crazy, messy middle, that we've got to come at it with so many tools. And that's why I think you're really helping people understand, is to, you know, do it, but it's the come from, it's that intention and conscious about how we're doing it that's going to make all the difference.
Our horses can do so much more than we think they can. Yeah. And interestingly, they want to. Honestly, through the Indigenous zone, for the most part, the ropes felt completely unnecessary. We were all in complete survival mode. We were scrabbling up things, and those horses were right with us. I mean, Zeus, who was my partner, I had to be really careful because the connection came so in a vortex, because it did feel life and death at times. So he was like, you're making really good choices right now, so I'm going to put my hooves exactly where your feet are going. Wow. So I had to get my foot out of the way really quick. Wow. And I wasn't going to tell him that was wrong. Elsa struggled really, really badly with vertigo at one point. It was horrendous. We were really worried about her. Wow. And her horse was not easy. Apollo was a really challenging horse. I watched that horse go up to her and he put himself under her arm. I watched him do it. And I went, oh my God, he's holding you up. There was no pulling them through because we had to get through. We were all rock solid together. And Mishka, who was with Liana, who was our pack horse out the front, Liana got really tired and made a couple of mistakes, as we all did. And that mare was like, get behind me. You've lost all rights now. I know where I'm going. And she hung on to that mare's tail. And that's when we went, this is what it's about. It's not about looking cool with the horse trotting along beside me. It's about us being in the trenches and them going, I've got you. Or us going, I've got you. And our friendships afterwards with those horses, I swear, we'd have had to have done something really stupid to have broken that. Wow. And that changed everything for me. Everything for me. And it was like, I'm not afraid to ask my horse to do things. I'm not afraid to say, don't do that. I'm not afraid to say, hey, if you don't feel like doing that, I'm totally okay with that. Because I feel that we're at that level where it's like, I'm not making them from the place of, this is how it's supposed to be done. This is what it's supposed to look like. Equally, I'm not right at the other end of the spectrum of going, I've seen horses in a whole nother light. I now can't ask them to do anything. Mm-hmm. I don't think that doesn't work for me. It doesn't work for the type of horses I attract in my life. They'd be like, really? Come on. Let's do something. Let me show you how ridiculous you are and how amazing I am. That's what they love. Yeah. And then I'm really humble to them, you know. So it changed everything. Yeah. But it was a risky one.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
You're a brave woman. No, but I love this. I love this. This is what I've been thinking about a lot too with my horses, because I ask a lot of my horses. And they also get a lot of freedom and a lot of choice in their life. So in the mornings, I'll often pick the one that goes first, just for ease of me sending the message out to my assistant, like, hey, I'm going to do this one first, get him near the area. But after that first one, I'll go out with him and I'll go, whoever wants to go next can go next. And
Great.
my horses are all loose in the area now. They've been out of their pasture, so they can come in and out of the barn. And it's amazing the choices that my horses make when you give them the opportunity to make a choice. They'll come in and one will go, hey, can I stand in the stall? Like, my horses don't live in stalls, but I have 2 stalls. But we call it the special place because they like to go, and they'll ask to go in the special place. So they go in there, and, some will come in and demand that they go next. I've groomed horses, and then I'll hold up the bridle and they turn away, and I'll give them a few chances. And if they really give me the vibe, I go, never mind, gonna play on, I'll play on the ground, or, do something else. So I think, are you letting the horse get away with something? No, it's like, it's a friendship. It's a relationship.
So debunked all of that.
Yeah. And, I feel like, they're allowed to tell me no. If no's not an option, then it's not really, I'm not really giving them a choice. So, and I think that's what's interesting is, we can ask a lot of our horses, and our horses can ask stuff of us too. And if we listen, I feel like it just all works out. They come back stronger the next day because they're not feeling like they have to protect themselves. They know I'll hear them.
We can ask a lot, and also we can spend large amounts of time in their world. There's several things that we can do easily. You can change things tomorrow just by watching the outside environment more for them, matching their feet when you walk, being interested in what they're interested in, and then take your turn and ask for what you would like to do. But the liberty mindset means that's peppered in all the way through, even when you're riding. They look at something, okay, let's just stop and have a look. It doesn't matter, but it does to them. It hugely matters to them where they go, oh my God, did you notice that too? And you go, yep, I see it. We're good, let's go. Okay, great. Because you've practiced it enough on the ground, like I try and make it a game where I will notice things before they do. And they go, well, if she's seen it and she's taken a deep breath, we're okay. Or if I see something and go, yeah, let's turn around and go that way, they're like, I'm with you. So you can have both. That's the key. People go to me, well, now, but if I do pure liberty, I can't tack up and go on my trail ride. Well, you obviously weren't paying attention, because you absolutely can. But take it with you.
Yeah, so I love that. Those are 3. So watch the outside environment. So be a partner with them and keeping an eye out, matching steps, and then be interested in what they're interested in.
Yeah, I worked with a dressage horse once that had dragged its owners down the breezeway for the last 13 years, like dangerously so. And I said to them, because I'm also a behavioural consultant as well, so I'll help people that are stuck with their horses. And I said, well, he's scared, but what does he do when you let him touch everything in the breezeway? Oh, well, we've never let him do that. So we spent 20 minutes, he touched everything, and that was it. The problem was over. So, touch, smell, looking, if we can just be in a little less of a rush and try and see the world, educate ourselves about the species. I know amazing horse people that perhaps don't understand the species all that well. And it's like, well, no, they're doing this because they can smell something from 4 miles away that you can't. And maybe they're not looking at something, they're smelling something. So many times if my horse is worried about something, I'll either hop off or walk up to it, rub it with my hand and take the scent back to them. And they'll go, oh, that's fine. Yeah, I know what that is. So I think it's bringing it into that world.
Yeah. And those are pretty easy steps for us to do. The hardest part is remembering, but they're very powerful things that they matter to the horse. And yeah, I think that that story about just letting the horse touch things in the breezeway, you know, that's such a simple thing that is often overlooked. I've seen horses that are really nervous in cross ties or something like that, and I'll do the same thing. I'll take the cross ties off and turn them around. There's usually something behind them that they've never been allowed to touch or look at. They're always turned around, and then there's this thing behind them. And just, yeah, some very little things. It's little for us to do. It doesn't take much time, can have a huge impact. And just making that mind shift that you care, that we go out of the because I said so. You know, so much in the traditional horse world is like, why? Because I said so. You know, and we have to make sure that they know, you know, and that actually, that attitude can be in natural horsemanship too. You know, the sort of, you need to be the leader. That language can often end up the same way. Like the leader, you know, has to be listened to all the time. And I think this, you know, where you're coming from is much more about relationship, and even if we can say friendship, you know, that's the goal, is that you know, that we know what makes horses happy, and we know what makes our own particular horse happy. I spend a lot of time trying to know my individual horse and say, what exactly does this horse like? I once made a list. I have I think 60 something things that my horses like very specific things, and then by horse. And it's a useful tool, you know, when you want to reward or appreciate your horse even more. It's good to know.
And they're all different. You know, they're all different. And it's like one of my horses in Costa Rica, Amadora, her most favorite thing to do was move. So she'd do something great, and then we'd just run around, and that was such a thing to her. But then I have other horses that are like, I just want to stand still and stare at that butterfly that's crossing the field. You know, and that's something that I massively learned from Elsa, was this looking, I just want to touch again on this looking outside. You know, we spend so much time staring at our horses because they're so beautiful, when your relationship will get so much deeper when you actually don't look at them. So when they're grazing, be really looking. I think Elsa calls it looking for mountain lions. And, you know, we're looking, we're really, and they just go, I'm safe. Because I tell you what, it's exhausting being the guardian horse within the herd. We're the ones that kind of looks out for everyone most of the time. It is exhausting for them. I can remember teaching a clinic in New Zealand, and a student, a good friend as well, she brought her 3 horses, and there was the head mare, who was 28 years old or something, and there was a 3-year-old lovely goofy pony and a gelding. Well, the mare had constantly been having to look out for everyone, and we put the 3 of them in the arena together, and they were paired up with 3 students, and they all started looking at the outside environment for the horses. That mare lay down and she fell asleep for 30 minutes because she went, thank God someone else is looking out for us. So it was so powerful. So that really cemented it for me. So I spend more time looking away from the horses. That obviously I'm using soft focus, as you'd call it, or the peripheral vision, to make sure nothing else is going on. But you can learn a lot about what your horse likes when you start doing that. You know, are they moving more? Are they grazing more? Are they just standing waiting for me to tell them what to do? Some horses like that. Some horses want to invent the games. You learn a lot.
I love that, checking the environment. I mean, that's something that I do, but I don't think I'm so conscious about it. So I'm going to be a little bit more conscious about it. I know a lot of times with the horses that are the guardian horses, they are the ones who a lot of people think it's so hard to get their attention, right? And they keep trying to make that horse look at them. But if you don't, at the same time, well, first you got to be attention worthy and interesting enough. But the biggest piece is, if they're not feeling safe in their environment, you're going to be fighting against that, and it's not going to feel good for them to look at you, because they're going to feel less safe when they look at you. So I love that piece about remembering to do that, be that safety lookout for them while you're in that calm state.
Yeah, and you'll find when you start doing it, they will start coming and checking in with you. Do you see that? Yeah, I see that. So, okay, we're good. And it's something that you can actually do together. I really learnt with Zeus in the film. He loved to stop and look at the views. And the first few days he was a bit sticky. All he wanted to do was eat, because he was a starvation case. All he wanted to do was eat. So one of the ways we got things moving was I would see a good view coming and I'd be like, I'll race you there. And I'd just start running and he'd start trotting behind, and we'd both skid to a stop at the view and be like, oh. And we'd just stay there for ages till we could feel that swell of energy. So I wouldn't be like, okay, now we're leaving. We'd both, I'd feel that energy of him start to change focus and be like, okay. And then we'd be like, okay, now I'm going to ask. Mm-hmm. You know, like, it's okay to ask your horses, but be smart about what you ask them and when you ask them. Yeah. And then you'll get a yes answer.
Yeah. And in the movie, I remember you said, the importance of having a value to your horse. I think it was in the movie that I saw you say this, you know, that you want the horse to be thinking, my life is so much better because you're here. And I love that way of putting it, is think, you know, what's the value to your horse? I had a student on one of my Q&A calls for my course say that I don't remember if it was a vet or if it was a trainer. They were standing in the aisle and her horse had an itch. And so she scratched her horse's itch. And the person said, never do that. You become their servant. And I thought, and she asked me about it. I'm like, well, what do you think? She's like, I want to scratch my horse's itches. I'm like, yeah, do that. So I thought, well, wow, you know, and I couldn't believe that it sort of shocked me. Like, really? But you know, if I see my horse trying to reach an itch, I'm the first one there. I'm like, this is something humans are really good at. We're really good at scratching places that are hard for you to scratch. But I love that, you know, my life is so much better because you're here, is what we, you know, imagine your horse thinking that, and that we go through life thinking, what value do I have to my horse, and what value can I bring to my horse? They have so little control over their lives. I think it's the least we could do is be thinking like that.
Exactly. It is the least we could do. And I think I learned that best from Honza Blaha. Actually, he was like, you know, the emotional bank. He taught me about the emotional bank. And, you know, give everything a price. Scratching your horse, $5 in the bank. Mm-hmm. Standing and watching the view, which is, you know, something I didn't do with Honza, but, you know, watching the view, that's £10. You know, all the things that your horse likes. And then the things that we ask them to do, put a price on it. A backup is $10. Piaffe is 45,000. Make sure that you have 100 grand in the bank before you start asking too much. So, you know, just put that time in. And then when you do ask your horse to do things, you have the credit. But it's having that liberty mindset of going, hey, do you think we could do this with the minimal amount of ask, with the minimal amount of pressure, with the minimal amount of telling, but with support from me? Mm-hmm. Hey, I've ridden horses where they really like contact. I've ridden other horses that didn't want contact. Know your horse. Know your horse, and don't do what you think you're supposed to do. Do what feels right. We all know what feels right, and we all know what doesn't feel right. You know, I talk with people about the comfort zone. You know, it's way out of a lot of people's comfort zone to go and walk from coast to coast in Costa Rica. That's insane. Like, that's way out of most people's comfort zone. But do something, you know, challenge yourselves and your horse a little bit within your comfort zone, just right at the edge. You don't go right out of it. I don't feel like learning starts outside your comfort zone. I think it starts right on the edge and push it out a bit. You know, start going for some walks. You will learn so much about your horse, and try using the liberty mindset where you go, okay, I'm on a rope, but if my horse likes it and I just put my hand on the withers and keep a loose rope, where do we go? Do we just stop dead, or are they happy to walk with me? You don't have to be out in front leading them like we're taught in Pony Club. You don't have to do that. And it's really fun to experiment, because there's no wrong. If it doesn't work, okay, we'll think, that's really interesting. Do I need to be more confident, or do I need to be less bossy? You know, dismantle it all. take it all apart and see what bits you need to change.
Yeah, love that. Love that. And it gives permission for people to, I love that you're giving people permission to experiment, you know, there's a beauty to knowing what it's like to follow a system and to see how a system builds on itself. Whoa. However, there's always a moment where you need to throw that away. So I think that's another kind of messy middle is, you know, you want to not be random as you train a horse. There's got to be a little things build on other things. But, you know, even with, you know, I created a system of sorts. It's not really a system. It's a framework or something. But I think so many times I see students who the goal is to like be the good Pirelli student or be the good dressage naturally student or be the good, and then they start trying to live up to the system. And for me, it's the other way around. A system is a tool. It's like, I have some tools and here's what they're good for. You have some tools, and to understand the cause and effect, and here's what we're trying to achieve. But I like what you said, like everybody's got their own dream. There's no one on the planet like you and your particular individual horse. Nobody's ever been that before with the goals and aspirations.
Revel
in that. And so I always tell people, like, use what I've created to help you create your dream, but don't try to be the perfect dressage naturally student. Like, you're not going to go anywhere. You know, but think about what you want and use it. And I think what you're, you know, that's been a bit of your journey, right? You've gone through systems and then you've known when to stop and explore another system and integrate it.
Yeah, and I do still use them. How I see Pure Liberty, which is, you know, the course that I've put together, it is something that can accompany you in whatever you do. Whether you want to do endurance, whether you want to do dressage, whether you want to do just more trained Liberty, you can take it with you. It's another piece of the puzzle. It's all a puzzle that we put together, and every horse's puzzle is different. And you could be like, I will be signing up. I have a 4-year-old mare at the moment who she's my life, and I will be signing up to the Find the Sweet Spot. That's my goal. In September, I'll be doing that. But I'll be doing it from my foundation of Pure Liberty. And I might ask for something and it will be wonderful, hopefully. And then I might stop and watch the tractor going across the top of the field. And we might hang out and we might go, that's enough. Or I might go, okay, now it's my turn again. So I see the leadership role as being this shifting ball. I'm going to have a turn, you're going to have a turn. I'm going to have a turn, you're going to have a turn. Any framework that you choose to use, it just works in perfectly. It's just another piece of it where, you know, I call it undemanding time with a purpose. So you're being a little bit more in your horse's world, that rather than just, I'm going to let them relax and I'm going to relax. I'm going to be interested in what they're touching. I'm going to look at the outside environment. When it's their turn and they decide they want to go for a stroll, I'm going to try and match their feet and harmonize. And then when it's my turn, I call it a call for attention. I go, hey, my turn. Do you mind? Okay, let's do this. If it doesn't work, I look to myself. Okay, was I too quick? Was I rushing? Was there a distraction that they really needed to look at? And I don't always let them stop and look, but I'll kind of run that through rather than going, oh my God, this horse won't do anything that it's told or whatever.
Yeah.
So, you know, you come from that framework of sharing the leadership, and I'm super excited to do the course. And my Pure Liberty will still be in there because I can have a Liberty mindset while I'm doing it.
Absolutely. Yeah. It'll be fun. It'll be fun to see, you know, how you integrate that, because the Sweet Spot course is also a lot about concepts of experimentation to find the place of ease. And so, you know, I'm going to show you techniques on how to do it, but it's the concept that's the most important part. Is like, it's experimentation, it's curiosity, instead of trying to like make something happen. So I think they all dovetail together beautifully. Yeah. So super fun. Wanted to pick up something else I heard you guys saying in the movie, is this idea of no consequences. then in training that like there was no, like you just sort of mentioned, if it doesn't work, you're going to look to yourself first. That's sort of interesting thing of saying, okay, there's no punishment. I think punishment is really low on the scale of like effective tools with horses. It's used often, but it's the least, one. But talk a little bit more about what, that commitment you guys made of like there's no consequences in the training.
Yeah, I mean, Elsa especially really lives in that world. Her way of working with them, like I'm not patient enough. So mine involves a lot more movement and more ask. But there doesn't have to be a consequence. So for instance, if I ask my horse to back up and they go, I'm not doing that. Okay, well, I feel like it was a really fair ask. I'll check myself. Was my energy right? Fair enough. You didn't have to do it. But I am going to come back again. Mm-hmm. So I'll take a loop and I'll ask again. And I'll try and have better energy. I will try and think, like I work a lot with body language. Body language is so powerful, as you do. So just because I've asked for something and the horse has said no, I don't just go, oh, well,
never mind.
That's it then. Equally, I don't get stronger. I don't use phases. So I think it was something for me. It was very personal for me, and I'm not really ready to dive into that. But suffices to say, I saw things when I was younger where aggression and potential violence and things were terrifying. So for me, that getting bigger in my head meant I was getting stronger, and that wasn't a world I wanted to be in. And I have really dived into this, and as long as I come back and ask, maybe in a subtler way, in a clearer way, it doesn't have to be stronger. There's no consequence. Well, you didn't back up, therefore I'm now going to go through phases and get stronger. I found I haven't had to do that. Maybe a horse I'll meet at some point will prove me. I'm always open to anything. But I found that I didn't need to use phases, and that the answer was nearly always in me. And if it was fair and I was approaching it with the right energy and the right body language and the right attitude, not an attitude of I'm taking this from you, but an attitude of, hey, can you match my feet and we back up together? That was so cool. Done. Mm-hmm. And it works. And it worked for me. So that was what I really have been diving into more lately, was like, actually, it's not about getting bigger. It's about how you feel inside and where you're coming from. Because horses know, if you're coming from this place of I'm taking this from you, you see the resentment just come down on their face instantly. And they'll do it, but they're like, I know what this is. Yeah. I know what this is. Whereas when you do it together, and it almost feels like, I'm really diving in here now, but it feels like their leg, and I know that you understand this, it feels like their leg moved your leg. Mm-hmm. And you're like in this bubble together, and it's just, oh my gosh, it feels like the Holy Grail to me. So that's what I seek.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, it's the leading and following, and then that shared space where nobody can say who's the leader, who's the follower, and that's when it feels like this dance, and that's the magic of horses, because we've and I think they feel it too. We're both experiencing something we can't, do by ourselves. But I think it's really valuable to explore this idea of no consequences, and not or at least saying, it doesn't have to be about getting bigger and stronger, but that you can also hold that intention. It's like, okay, well, we're going to still, how about if I come at it from this angle? How about, and again, that's that interesting space of not giving up, not just saying, okay, whatever, not getting stronger, but how can we hold that intention, stay curious, stay committed? It's, I always say, if it's fair, reasonable, and possible, then we're going to do it. But how am I going to get there? Yeah,
sometimes just waiting. And what can be just 5 seconds feels like 5 hours sometimes, you know, because I move quick. I'm quick. I do want to add in, there are sometimes consequences back in the real world. You know, like I've got a very rambunctious 4-year-old who has a massive opinion, which I very much value, but there are times where it's like, actually, no, that's not okay. And I will say, no, enough. You're going to hurt me. I'm not having that. You know, something like, oh, we're coming in from the field and one of the other horses is whooshing past and she's like, yay! And it's like, no, that can't happen. And I'm not afraid to bump on the lead rope. Like I'm a realist. Yeah. But when I'm in those moments, when I'm in my training world, in my training bubble, then it's like, okay, now's the time where I want to really explore. If I just hold space for a minute, wait, breathe.
Yeah. And I mean, things like boundaries, there's nothing more natural than a horse establishing a boundary with another horse. So, I mean, that's a very natural thing for a horse to say, there's the edge, not going there. No, I think it, but I really appreciate the way you're talking about it, because, you know, it'd be easy just to talk about dreaming and everything flowing, and, you know, reality is reality. And that's why I think we need to be really conscious about what we're doing and how we can do it our absolute best as we start to, ask and try to create more and more with these horses, no matter what we're doing. We owe it to them to be even our better all the time, our better versions of ourselves, and not just go always to bigger, evolving. Stronger, always evolving. Absolutely. Oh my goodness. Well, you gave me a lot to think about. This is really fun conversation. We are definitely, no wonder it feels like we've met. I think we have met just out there in the energy world, because we're on
written together somewhere.
Yeah, really cool. Well, I know you have a book coming out in July, and you mentioned you have an online course as well as the movie. So where can people learn and find out more about you and find the book and the course and the movie?
So the book is going to be out, I believe, in August. I think it's called Crossing Bridges. That's just something that I just briefly wanted to touch on, because of some people looking at this, they're like, oh, well, okay, I'm now just going to dive into doing that. For some horses that especially have come through natural horsemanship and stuff, don't suddenly change. Cross the bridge slowly. Pepper a few things in. Keep doing what you're doing, but be more aware of yourself. Look at the outside environment, then ask. Don't just suddenly go to not asking anything, because your horse will stand there going, I feel so lost. I don't know what to... And it's really hard for them. So slowly pepper things in with what you're doing. That's what I'd say. But the book's called Crossing Bridges. And yes, that's out in August. That's something incredibly special to me. So I really hope others enjoy it. My course is called Pure Liberty. The website's purelibertycourse.com, but you can also find it through Horse Class. It's in amongst that at Horse Class, and the film is on Vimeo. Taming Wild Pura Vida.
Beautiful.
I think that's all of it.
All right, that's you. You're a busy woman. I know the effort that goes into creating all of these things. So, thank you so much for sharing your story and these really valuable lessons. I know you've given people a lot to think about. I really appreciate it.